Hello everybody, this is Irosa505 today, and today we want to try out something a little different. I want to share with you a little something I actually gone pondering when actually doing extreme DPing. Today I'm going to discuss with you about extreme DPs and where do you start. Let's begin. Imagine this following scenario. You have finally diamond an extreme, which is around 99,000 points, and each extreme box you get is going to be apparent about figuring out the new set of challenges along the way. And if you're like me, you're going to be interested in DPing any extreme that comes your way. But the question is though, where do we start? In my experience here, the best way to approach an extreme is to ask yourself the following questions. The first would be, what does the chart challenge you on? This is what we'll get into more later, but the second question comes in here is, what is more challenging, the clearing or the scoring? This comes into the fact of which one actually stretches you out the most, which leads to 3, are there any specific skills to improve on, speed, stamina, tricks, or anything else? 4, which extreme has the most straightforward challenge? This will be apparent towards later when I get into the whole entire skill or motif. And 5, how do you plan to practice each skill? So to understand each skill in order to work with, I divided each extreme skills into 5 separate subgenres. In this case, the skill set in this would be all-around patterns, speed-based extremes, stamina-based extremes, concentration, and solos. This may seem bizarre at first, but this will make a lot more sense when going into each extreme. First set we'll take a look at is the all-around pattern extremes. This may seem a little bit bizarre, but actually these extremes are the ones with the most straightforward approach. They're usually the more slow paced or the ones that take time to gather all the patterns in this challenge. And most extremes around the skill set are the easiest to score and clear as they usually present minimal or mild challenge in each skill set. And the most frequent genres in this category would be pop or the easier dance, rock, or hip hop. Some examples of all-around pattern extremes comes down to the 3 easiest extremes in my opinion in this game. Gangnam Style is definitely the easiest one in said extremes, with only mild fast tapping, hold sections, and cross sections. The drill here challenges you more on the drill sections, speeds up, and hold tap sections. And while the hardest in said all-around patterns, Machina Vibes only have awkward stares and swipes. Now, my note here is that if you're going to plan to do all-around extreme patterns first, the first one you have to do is the best introduction to extremes, as there are limited patterns with slower scroll speed or lesser notes. If you were to start off here, I say you probably start off with Gangnam Style for the easiest challenge, though if you want something a little more awkward pattern, I would say you should start with Machina Vibes. Speed-based extremes are the ones that are self-explanatory. They're heavily reliant on fast patterns or scroll speed. Most of these extremes give you little time to think about where these patterns are going to be. You can tell which speed extremes will be determined if you have a larger perfect plus bar. Some of them may not be dense, but they deliver something that may go above your usual speed and Beatstar charts, and these usually fall around mostly dance or rock kind of extremes. So to demonstrate a bit about speed-based extremes, I've chosen these 3 examples below. What these extremes have in common are a big perfect plus bar, the scroll speed would be faster than usual when progressing, and there's a lot of unexpected turns when it comes to speed-based extremes. For example, Rockstar here, while probably one of the easier speed-based extremes, has really unexpected jumps and fast tapping. I Know Little has fast triplets and a solo that does leave you on your feet, and Figure Out has a lot of fast tapping and some drift involved. I say if you can handle the sudden shifts in speed and everything else, I say you should start with Rockstar for speed-based extremes, as it preps you out for the faster speeds and extreme going on. Next up we have is stamina-based extremes. While the specs seem a bit similar to speed-based extremes, the difference here is that they're either dense tapping extremes or consist of patterns that exert a lot of energy. These patterns are usually the repetitive ones that require constant tapping or excessive use of a complex pattern. I say probably the easiest in a stamina-based extreme category will probably be something like Sandstorm or Archangel, where they have repetitive extreme but no major tricks at all to get you off your feet. If you want something a little more moderate, I say something like Gimme Some More, which is constant dense tapping, but does give you a break once in a while. And of course, we got something like Sweatbox here, which does require a lot of stamina, but actually has a complex pattern that's being repeated back and forth. So I say it's your decision between the 3 right here, which one you want to start with. But if I had to say which one's the easiest in this case, I'd probably choose Sandstorm. The next skill set is the concentration extremes. This one applies to most extremes, but these extremes usually rely on heavy concentration DPA. It could be maybe someone throws a curveball in patterns, or there could be a different way to play it. For example, Therapy relies on a slower speed, but it has some unexpected microblasts you need to concentrate on. Duhas concentrates on many stacks here that'll double up later if you're not careful. And Bonfire has a lot of swipes in there, but there's a lot of fast drills that can get you if you're not careful. I say if you can do well on concentration on unexpected twists or build-up, I say the easiest one to focus on first would be something easier to concentrate like Duhas for the stacking, or drifting away from the unexpected patterns. Lastly, the skill set here is the solo extremes. While this is common, solos and extremes do separate many from what type of challenge you want to focus on. So if you want to go for your first one in the solo extremes, consider the following for these types of extremes. First are the developing solos. These take time to build up the major challenge. For example, Tornado Souls and Gimme Chocolate do actually have a hard pattern, but actually have most of their challenge comes in during the final stage with their solos. Then, of course, there are the wonky solos. They give a sense of very strict or awkward timing when you're trying to do this challenge. The Devil Went Down to Georgia by Corn and the previous Why Notice Big Brown Beaver have this kind of problem. And thirdly are the excessive solos, solos that go full force on patterns and speed up the challenge when we're not careful. You can tell here with Godzilla and the Trooper that these are some of the main candidates of some, which do actually land themselves in some of the hardest extremes of the game. So with all these skill sets in mind, the question here is that where do you start? Your best bet here is to decide where is your strong point. For example, I made a list right over here that does actually try to split itself for each skill set. If you're choosing which one's your strength, always ask yourself a question here, which one does the best one? If you're doing all-around patterns, always ask yourself which is the most straightforward or awkward challenge to do. For speed, always ask yourself if there's any kind of patterns that do trick you up, maybe excess jumping or tapping, and always choose which one you can do the best. For stamina base, always guarantee whether or not it's just basically tapping or there's some tricks involved. For concentration extremes, always observe any obstacle to focus on. You could play an extreme and then one pattern over there throw a curveball at you and you have to focus on that. And lastly, for solo extremes, focus on what solo is the easiest to do. You can play a majority of these kind of rock, hip hop, or dance extremes and not find which solo you want to do, but always find the one you do the best in. So in this case over here, all around should actually focus on either Gangnam Style for straight 4 or Machine Advice for awkward patterns first. Speed extreme should focus on Rockstar I Know a Little for excess jumping or tapping. Stamina base can actually choose which ones they want, but I do recommend Archangel first for tricks or Samstorm for no tricks. Concentration, the best one to start off for will be Do Haas, and for solos it's a decision here whether which one's your strong point, developing, wonky, or excessive solos. There are a few additional things to note here with this strategy. Some extremes can branch into 2 or more skills. For example, some easier extremes like Party Hard and the Fast Lane both have skills like all-around patterns and concentration. It all depends here about what you think is the hardest skill to work on or which skill you think lands perfectly here. But they do actually help in the grand scheme of trying to DP it. Another thing is that you're not going to be restricted by trying any harder extremes like Overdrive or Thrones of Blood. The experiment I'm putting here is to always experiment on which strength you want to focus on. You can use these extremes also as an example to see which one they land towards. Another thing is that Deluxe Extreme does vary on skill as well, and they do actually have some beneficial ways too if you actually want to ask what strength you rely on. And depending on your playstyle, always practice the skill you want to do. So if you're wanting to do a speed extreme, always practice on how fast you want to tap your thumbs. If you want to practice on concentration extreme, always make sure you fix a curveball that goes away on the extreme chart. And another thing, don't be upset if your first extreme DP is an easy one like Gangnam Style. The point of Beatstar Extremes is to work your way up in terms of which extremes you want to do and what extremes are your strong points. As for me, my first Extreme DP was definitely Gangnam Style, but I think it did a wonderful job actually trying to develop me in terms of skills. So to wrap things up, I want you to take note of this real quickly. Remember that when starting your quest for Extreme DPing, always ask yourself where your strength lays within each extreme, which one you think actually does the best job. Always ensure you know what challenge gives you the hardest time and how to practice. For me, I believe solo extremes are probably the hardest one for me personally, and the way to practice too is to always understand which one you want to start with. Another thing is to give every skill a try to see which extremes start falling in your favor. For me, speed extremes usually fall into my favor the more I practice, and also concentration extremes. So if that can work, definitely it can work for you. And also, be happy with any first extreme DP you get, regardless if it's easy or not. Gangnam Style, The Drill, Hard Frequencies, Do Haas, Party Hard, Rockstar. While they may be easier candidates for some, I do really love and appreciate any first extreme DP being both an easy or a hard one. It's all the fun of actually trying to learn how to do each extreme. And of course, always have fun. Extremes are supposed to be the hardest charts in the entire game, for some at least, and they really do give a bigger variety of very, very tough patterns than Beatstar. As always, thank you all so much for watching, and you all have a good rest of your day. Bye bye.